I've been using deck rails for over a year and a half now, and my skateboarding has improved so much in that time. The main purpose of deck rails is to help you slide longer, faster and smoother, but there are so many more benefits that come with putting these little plastic strips on your board. I'll go over all of those positives to riding deck rails and how to properly install them on your board in a second, but I just set up this brand new 9.75 inch symmetrical egg board with some fresh little Jorns rails that I put on them too that I'm so keen to skate right now. So I'm going to have a quick little warm-up session, try and wear this board in a little bit, and then I'll go over how riding deck rails can make you a better skater. So besides allowing you to slide longer, faster, smoother, more consistently, and with less wax, some other major benefits I've found to riding deck rails is just being a lot more stable on top of the rail. Since the deck rails create a flat base under your board, you don't have to lean on your heels or toes to counteract the concave of your deck. You can just hop on a rail and slide, knowing that you're stable and the rail will just go. The peace of mind that comes with this makes me so much more comfortable with sliding tricks where you're going backwards, like back lip slides and switch front boards. They're tricks that are pretty dangerous if you end up sticking, because you're just going to fall straight backwards onto the rail. So knowing as soon as you get on, the rail will just go is so much more helpful with those tricks. The rail also makes contacts on grinds like feebles, smiths, hurricanes and wheelie grinds, so all of those are a lot smoother since it isn't the board that's contacting the rail or the ledge. It's just purely metal and plastic, so there's no resistance. They help you slide on more harsh and crusty ledges and rails that wouldn't be as easy with your board making contact and digging into the rough surfaces. The rails act as a bit of reinforcement on a cracked board, so it makes that board last a little bit longer after you've cracked it. It's easier to do melon and indie grabs or just carry your board in general, since you pretty much got a little handle you can hook your fingers onto. They protect your board graphic and also protect your board itself if you're sliding on crusty ledges and rails. They make your setup sit slightly higher on a curb or quarter pipe coping, which helps you do different slides and grinds without your wheels dragging and slowing you down. And the biggest positive that's helped me unlock so many different tricks is allowing you to push up into different feeble and hurricane grinds from your board slide. Using the rails as a leverage point and pushing either your heels or toes down and turning your truck into the rail helps so much getting into different combinations that would be so much harder without rails on your board. So for me, all of these positives have improved my skating so much over the last year and a half, especially for someone that likes to skate pretty much just rails, curbs and ledges. So deck rails suit my style of skating perfectly. But with all of the positives that come with skating deck rails, there are still a few negatives. So I'm going to get back into the session and do all of those tricks that deck rails help so you can see them in action more. And then I'll go over the negatives of riding deck rails and how to apply them to your board correctly. It was getting way too hot out there, so I had to get indoors and come back home, but I had such a good session on this board. I really miss riding a 9.75 inch board. I alternate between my 9.5 and 10 inch, but this feels like the best of both worlds. Bigger, more comfortable, heaps more stable, but it's not as big and clunky as a 10 inch board either, so I'm loving this setup. So the negatives I've found that come with skating deck rails is slipping out on quarter pipe stalls like disasters when you aren't planning to slide, getting wheel bite on the actual rails if you have a short wheelbase and the rails land underneath the wheels there. The screws coming loose or falling out completely, which creates an annoying flapping sound because the rail isn't fastened to the board anymore. Or your rail getting ripped off completely if you're skating an inconsistent ledge or rail with grooves in it, where your rails can get caught in. And my biggest negative is getting the wax on your rails and then holding your board when you're carrying it, and then that wax transfers onto your shirt and you get a stain on the side of your shirt there. That can be annoying, especially if you're wearing a white shirt. These negatives aren't major though, and they're definitely not a deal breaker for me. The positives of riding deck rails definitely outweigh the negatives. Now, installing your deck rails the right way can definitely fix a lot of these problems, and I do get so many questions asking how far in that I put my deck rails, or just how to install them properly in general. I personally like to put my deck rails 3 centimeters in from the side of the deck. I found this spot works perfectly for all those board slide to hurricane type grind variations, since it gives you that nice little section here to push down on the rail and turn into those tricks. Any further out and I feel like that section's too small and it becomes too sharp and lifts your board up too much to get into those grinds consistently. For me anyway, I've just found that 3 centimeter mark is a sweet spot. But if you're using deck rails purely just to grab your board easier, then having them further in is going to be further to reach. You're going to want them closer to the outside so that you can get your fingers to them easier. Just keep in mind the concave of your deck, and that putting them out too far, you can still put them too far to where the middle of the board contacts with the rail too. So for me, 3 centimeters in is the sweet spot for combo grinds, grabbing my board, still having my graphic protected, and not touch my wheels and get wheel bite on the actual rails. Now once I have marked the 3 centimeter mark on both sides, I peel the double-sided tape off, even the rails out to the center of the wheelbase, and place it on the mark. All of the Little John's deck rails come with double-sided tape underneath just to help them stay on your board better and easier to line up when you're applying them. But if you have a different brand of deck rails, I definitely recommend cutting off some double-sided tape and just putting a few pieces on the underside. This is a game changer. Once your rails are stuck down on the mark, I recommend screwing them in with a screwdriver rather than a drill, since you can feel how deep they are going in, and when they are fully in, instead of drilling them in too far and stripping the holes. I like to do the screws in halfway in each hole first to make sure the rails stay exactly where I want them to, and then I'll go through and tighten each one all the way in. You should feel when the screw is all the way in because it'll get harder to turn, but as long as you tighten them enough to where the rail is sitting flat and flush with your deck, then you're all good to go. Check out this video right here to see how easy it is to learn board slide to hurricane using these deck rails as a cheat code.